So now we're going to do some math with those things. So, first thing we want to do, there's a negative under the square root of 66, so I am going to make that I square root of 66 on the bottom. Again, that 1 is negative, so I'm going to make that I square root of 6. Now, what do you suppose happens when you have an I over an I?
I squared.
Nope, that's when you times it. I times I is I squared. When I take something divided by itself,
You get 1.
it's a 1, but I can just cancel it out of there, right?
Oh, okay.
Since it's both on the top and on the bottom. Now we need to simplify our expression. We have the square root of 66 over the square root of 6. What can I do with that?
66. Square root of 66.
Since these are both under the square root, I can rewrite it as one fraction. Square root of 66 over 6, right?
Oh, really?
Really, because they're both under the square root. If one is under the square root and the other is not, I can't do that. But since they are both under the square root, I can just make it one square root. And what can I do with 66 sixths?
Divide it.
I can divide it. I'm going to get the square root of 11. Square root of 11, nothing I can do to simplify that. Doesn't have any perfect squares. That's all the simplifying I can do. There's my answer. Now if we look at the next one. We have negative square root of 121. What do we do with that?
You're going to do equals I square root of 121.
Okay. Now, can I simplify that part further?
121?
Can you do the square root of 121?
Oh yeah, 11.
11. So this becomes 11, and so I times 11, we're just going to write as 11I, right? Times on the other part of it. Now notice this one doesn't have a square root, or doesn't have a negative. It's just the square root of 144. Can you do the square root of 124 or 144?
144? Yep, by 12.
It's just a 12. So now we have 11I times 12. We're going to multiply those together just like we take an 11x times a 12. So I'm just going to multiply the 11 times 12. 132. I then, right? Because it still has the I in there. And not much we can do with that. We've got it simplified as much as we can. All right. Number 5. We have the square root of negative 13 times the square root of negative 7. So, first part of that, what can I do with that?
You're going to do I square root of 13.
I squared of 13. 13 doesn't have anything that I can simplify any farther, so I just write it as I squared of 13. Times, second part of that.
Square root of 7.
It does have the negative, so I have to write it as I square root of 7. So now we're going to multiply those together. Remembering when we multiplied with square roots, we did the front parts together and the square roots together. So I times I would be I
square root.
Whoops, I times I is and x times an x is x to the second power, right?
Yeah.
And I times an I is an I to the second power. Square root of 13 times 7.
Is that 91?
91. Now, there's one other weird thing in here that we haven't talked about yet, because you know I put all these things in there so we can talk about them. If I is equal to the square root of negative 1, I squared is going to be equal to the square root of negative 1 squared. And what happens when you square a square root? When you square a square root, their opposites, it just eliminates it, right? So we just get minus 1. So anytime you have I squared in your problem, you're going to substitute in a negative 1 in its spot. So now we're going to have negative 1 times the square root of 91. And simplifying that, we really don't need the 1 then. It just means I have negative square root of 91. And I can't simplify that any farther. Right? Negative times a positive just makes the whole thing negative. So, something to watch out for. Anytime you have I squared, you're going to put a negative 1 in its spot. We'll get to more of that later. Second part of number 5. First thing I'm going to do with the top part of that.
You can have square root, yeah, 180.
We're looking at the second part of number 5.
Oh.
You jumped to number 6 on me.
Jenny, hurry up. So that's going to be square root 20.
So we're going to have I square root of 20, right? On the bottom, we're just going to have the square root of 10. What can we do with the square root of 20 over the square root of 10?
You can bring it down.
What did we
Oh,
do
you
on
wanna
the previous one when they were both under square roots? What did we do?
You multiply it.
No,
Oh, sure.
we're not multiplying there, we're dividing. Look at the first one. When we had a square root over another square root, what did we do?
This one we just put equals 20 and 6, or 10.
So I'm going to have
Equals,
I times the square root of 20 over 10, right? We made it one big square root?
yeah.
That's what we did, and then what did we do?
And then we,
Then we reduced.
yeah,
20 tenths would be?
5.
No. 20 divided by 10 is?
Oh. I'm trying to think of, 20 divided by 10.
2. So we just get I square root of 2. And that's going to be my answer. That's as far as I can do anything to simplify that. All right, so in number 6, what are we going to do?
We are going to make the 180 a positive, so square root of 180.
I square root of 180
I is square root of 180.
over
Over I square root of 10.
I squared of 10. What am I going to do with that mess?
And then we'll go I, a big fraction, 180.
Now, look at this one.
Oh,
This one up here only had one I, right? That's the I on the top. This one has it on the top and the bottom. What happened when we had it on the top and the bottom?
oh yeah, we have to do I square.
Nope, that's when you multiplied.
Oh,
Look at the first example. We're dividing an I by an I.
an I by an I, so it's going to be just an I, just one I.
Nope.
Yeah. Negative.
Look at the first example, number 4. Go back to number 4.
Number 4.
What happened
4.
when you had an I on the top and the bottom of your fraction?
Oh, we canceled them out.
We canceled them out, right. You said they're equal to 1. They are, but we don't really need to write the 1 there. We cancel them. So now what do we have?
So now you have the big square root of 180 over 10.
Now, square root of 18 can be simplified because we can factor a perfect square out of 18. 18 is what times what?
2 times 9.
2 times 9. I'm going to write it as 9 times 2 because I like my perfect square first. And then what can we do with the square root of 9?
You can, square root of 9 is 3 times...
So we put the 3 out in front and we get 3 square root of 2. Now we've got it simplified as much as we can simplify it. All right, the next one on number 6. What do I do with my square root of negative 6?
Your negative 6 can be positive 6.
And I'm going to make it I square root of 6. Can't do anything to simplify the square root of 6 part of it. Same thing with that square root of 11. It doesn't have the negative, but I can't do anything to simplify it. So what I have is I square root of 6 times the square root of 11. How do I multiply those together? What do I do to multiply those together?
You do the big fraction?
Nope, because I'm not dividing.
Oh, you're not dividing. Okay, so...
So we're multiplying these, we're not dividing, so we're not going to make the big fraction. We're just going to multiply them. Just like we did up here, right? So when I multiply those, I'm going to get I square root of 6 times 11, 66 then. 66 doesn't have any factors that are perfect squares. I can divide 6 in there, but 6 is not a perfect square, so I'm done. That's all I can do with that one. Let's make it I squared of 66.
I like these ones.
All right. Well, you'll like these next ones even better.